The endless war. The emergency alarm echoed through the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Thexar of the Morphidian race stood at the center podium, his forearms trembling with frustration. Another colony destroyed, he announced, his voice heavy with grief. The Kreth Empire bombed Valorian Settlement 12. 3 million civilians dead. The Valorians have promised revenge. The council chamber fell silent. 47 alien species sat in their designated seats, and every single one of them looked tired. This was not new information. This was the same story they had heard for 10,000 years. 10,000 years of war. 10,000 years of death. 10,000 years of failure. Councillor Veshra, an elderly being from the peaceful Zentari species, slowly stood up. Her silver skin had dulled with age, and her eyes carried the weight of centuries. "How many times have we sat here?" she asked quietly. "How many times have we counted the dead? My grandmother sat in this very seat when this war began. I inherited her position. My granddaughter will probably inherit mine, and she will sit here counting bodies too." The truth in her words hurt everyone in the room. The Kreth-Valorian War had become a fact of galactic life. Like gravity, like the stars burning in space. It simply was. No one questioned it anymore. No one believed it could end. Ambassador Kroll from the military Draknor species slammed his fist on his desk. "We have tried everything. Peace treaties, trade sanctions, military blockades. Nothing works. They want to fight. Let them destroy each other." "But they are not just destroying each other," said Ambassador Lyrie, her voice soft but firm. "The war is spreading. They fight near our borders. Their battles destroy neutral trade routes. Last month, a Kreth battleship accidentally bombed one of our cargo ships. 17 of my people died." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Kreth Empire and the Valorian Federation had been mortal enemies for so long that no one even remembered how the war started. Historians had searched ancient records. They found battle reports, casualty lists, and propaganda. But the original reason? Lost to time. Some said it started over a disputed planet. Others claimed it was a trade disagreement. A few believed it began with the assassination of a Kreth prince by a Valorian spy. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that billions had died. Entire star systems had been turned into graveyards. Beautiful planets had become wastelands. And still, the war continued. "Every generation of Kreth is born into hatred of Valorians," explained Ambassador Thexar. "And every Valorian child grows up learning that Kreth are monsters. They teach it in schools. They sing songs about it. They build monuments to it. We should just let them finish it," growled Kroll. "Eventually one side will win." "No," said Veshra firmly. "In 10,000 years, neither side has gained a real advantage. They are perfectly matched in strength. This war will never end through victory. It will only end when both sides choose peace. And they will never choose peace," Kroll replied. The chamber fell into gloomy silence once again. That was when the doors opened. A new figure entered the council chamber. The being was relatively small compared to most species present. It walked on 2 legs, had 2 arms, and wore a simple blue and white uniform. A human. The whispers started immediately. The humans. What are they doing here? Earth species. They just joined the galactic community 50 years ago. Primitives. They barely have faster-than-light travel. Why would they attend an emergency war council? The human walked calmly to the visitors' podium. The being appeared to be female, with dark skin and intelligent brown eyes. She carried a data tablet and showed no fear despite standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Honored council members," she began, her voice clear and confident. "My name is Ambassador Jennifer Okafor, representing Earth and humanity. I apologize for interrupting, but my government has been studying the Kreth-Valorian conflict." Several council members laughed. "Studying?" Kroll's voice dripped with mockery. "Child species, we have been trying to end this war for 10,000 years. What could you possibly know that we do not?" Ambassador Okafor did not react to his rudeness. Instead, she smiled. It was a calm, knowing smile that made several council members suddenly uncomfortable. "With respect, Councillor Kroll," she said quietly, "you have been trying to end this war the wrong way. You have been treating it like a military problem, but it is not. Then what is it? Demanded Thexar. The human's smile grew wider. It is a business. The council chamber erupted in confused shouting. Ambassadors argued with each other. Some demanded the human be removed. Others wanted to hear more. Ambassador Okafor simply stood there, waiting patiently. Finally, Veshra raised her hand for silence. The elderly councillor stared at the human with curious eyes. "Explain yourself, Ambassador," she said. "I will," Jennifer replied. "But first I need to ask you all one question. In 10,000 years of war, have any of you actually investigated who profits from this conflict?" The chamber went completely silent. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had no answer. And in that silence, something changed. Something small, but powerful. The human plan ambassador Okafor tapped her data tablet, and a holographic display filled the center of the council chamber. Numbers, charts, and financial records floated in the air like glowing stars. "For the past 2 years," she began, "human analysts have been studying publicly available economic data from both the Kreth Empire and the Valorian Federation. What we found was surprising." Councillor Veshra leaned forward in her seat. "Go on." "The war consumes approximately 40% of both nations' total economic output," Okafor explained. "Weapons manufacturing, shipbuilding, soldier training, medical care for wounded, replacement of destroyed infrastructure. It is the largest industry in both empires." "We know this already," Kroll interrupted impatiently. "War is expensive. Tell us something new." Okafor's eyes hardened slightly. "What if I told you that the same 12 families control the major weapons manufacturers in both empires? What if I told you these families have been selling weapons to both sides for 3,000 years? The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. "Impossible!" shouted Ambassador Thexar. "It is not impossible. It is documented." Okafor expanded the hologram. Names appeared. Family trees, corporate ownership records, bank transactions. The Kreth military buys 90% of its plasma cannons from Vorath Industries. Vorath Industries is secretly owned by the Kelman family. That same family owns Stellar Dynamics, which sells 85% of all energy shields to the Valorian military. Silence. "They are selling weapons to both sides?" Veshra whispered in disbelief. "Not just weapons, everything. Food supplies, medical equipment, fuel, ship parts. The same corporations appear on both sides under different names. When a Kreth battleship destroys a Valorian station, Kreth corporations get paid to build new ships. Valorian corporations get paid to rebuild the station. Then the cycle repeats." Ambassador Lyri's face showed horror. "They are prolonging the war deliberately." "Yes," Okafor confirmed. "But it gets worse. The military leadership on both sides knows about this arrangement. In fact, they benefit from it." Another hologram appeared. This one showed luxury estates, private planets, and massive bank accounts. "General Thrak commands the Kreth Northern Fleet. He has estates on 7 different worlds. His personal fortune is worth 12 billion credits. Where did a military officer get that kind of wealth?" Okafor paused. "He owns shares in the same weapons companies supplying his fleet. Every battle he fights makes him richer." "And the Valorians?" asked Veshra quietly. "Admiral Zenith of the Valorian Defense Force, 9 luxury estates, personal fleet of recreational spacecraft, 15 billion credits in hidden accounts. She also owns shares in weapons corporations. She also profits from every battle." The council sat in stunned silence. Kroll stood up abruptly. "These are serious accusations, human. Do you have proof?" "Every piece of data I am showing you comes from public records. Financial disclosures, corporate registration documents, property ownership files. It has always been there. No one bothered to look." Councillor Veshra's voice trembled with anger. 10,000 years, billions dead, and it was all for profit? "Not entirely," Okafor said carefully. "The war did start for real reasons long ago, but around 7,000 years ago, certain people realized they could benefit from it. They made sure peace negotiations always failed. They promoted the most aggressive generals. They funded propaganda that kept the hatred alive. Generation after generation, they fed the machine." Ambassador Thexar's forearms shook with rage. "The soldiers fighting and dying have no idea?" "None. The common soldiers believe they are fighting for honor, for their people, for survival. They have no idea their own leaders are profiting from their deaths. The council chamber exploded with angry voices. Ambassadors shouted at each other. Some demanded immediate action. Others questioned if the human data could be trusted. Okafor waited patiently for the chaos to settle. Hope. Finally, Veshra spoke. Even if this is true, what can we do? We cannot simply tell the Kreth and Valorian people. Their governments control all media. They control education. They control the narrative. That is where you are wrong, Counselor, Okafor said with a slight smile. They control official channels, but they do not control everything. What do you mean? Humans have experience with this type of situation. In our history, we have fought wars that benefited only the powerful while common people suffered. We learned how to end such conflicts. How? Multiple council members asked simultaneously. You do not convince the leaders. You convince the soldiers. You do not broadcast from government channels. You speak directly to the people. You bypass the system entirely, Kroll scoffed. The Kreth and Valorian militaries are disciplined. Their soldiers follow orders without question. You cannot simply walk up to them and start a conversation. Okafor's smile widened. Actually, we can, and we will. She tapped her tablet again. A new image appeared showing hundreds of small human spacecraft. These are diplomatic shuttles, unarmed, clearly marked with peace symbols. For the past 6 months, we have been positioning them near battle zones. We have been waiting for this council's permission to proceed. Permission to do what exactly? Veshra asked. To talk, to share information, to show soldiers on both sides the truth about their war. We have translated all this financial data into Kreth and Valorian languages. We have prepared simple, clear presentations that any soldier can understand. We will broadcast it on all frequencies. We will drop data chips on planets. We will send messages through every communication network we can access. The Kreth and Valorian governments will try to stop you, warned Leary. Yes, they will. That is why we need the Council's protection. If you declare this an official peacekeeping mission, they cannot attack us without violating galactic law. The Council members looked at each other uncertainly. This is risky, Thexar said. If it fails, the war might get worse. If we do nothing, Okafor replied quietly, the war will continue forever. More billions will die. And in 10,000 more years, another council will sit here having this exact same conversation. Veshra stood slowly. Her old eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was strong. I vote yes. Give the humans their chance. One by one, other ambassadors stood. Yes, agreed. Let them try. Even Kroll reluctantly stood. I still think this will fail, but I am tired of counting bodies. Yes, Ambassador Okafor bowed respectfully. Thank you, Honored Council. We will begin immediately. As she turned to leave, Veshra called out, Ambassador Okafor, why does humanity care so much about a war that does not affect your people? The human stopped and looked back. Because we know what it is like to be lied to by our leaders. We know what it is like to fight wars that only make rich people richer. And we know that the galaxy is better when people know the truth. She left the chamber. Behind her, the Galactic Council sat in thoughtful silence. Somewhere in deep space, human diplomatic shuttles received their orders and began moving toward the war zone. The truth was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The truth spreads. Lieutenant Caven of the Kreth Empire crouched behind the ruins of what used to be a communications tower. His purple scales were covered in dust and dried blood. He had been fighting on this worthless planet for 6 months. He could not even remember the planet's name anymore. Across the battlefield, somewhere in the smoke and debris, Valorian soldiers waited. They would attack soon. They always did. Then Caven and his unit would fight back. People would die. Night would fall. Morning would come, and they would do it all again. This was life. This was war. This was all Caven had ever known. His communication device crackled to life. All units be advised. Unknown spacecraft approaching your position. Small craft appear to be unarmed. Caven raised his weapon and scanned the sky. He saw them, dozens of small white shuttles with strange blue symbols painted on their sides. What are those? Asked Private Zeth, his youngest soldier. No idea. Stay alert. The shuttles did not attack. Instead, they hovered above the battlefield and began broadcasting a message. Attention, Kreth and Valorian forces. We are human diplomatic representatives. We are unarmed. We carry information both your governments have hidden from you. Please, just listen. Cavan's commanding officer's voice exploded over the radio. All units, ignore the broadcast. These are enemy tricks. Do not listen. But Cavan was curious. The shuttles were clearly not Valorian, and they said they had information. What information? Against orders, Cavan kept listening. A female voice began speaking. It was calm and clear. Soldiers of Kreth and Valoria, my name is Ambassador Jennifer Okafor. I represent humanity in the Galactic Council. We have discovered something about your war, something your leaders do not want you to know. Data began streaming across Cavan's communication device. Financial records, corporate ownership documents, bank accounts. The corporations that supply your weapons are owned by the same families on both sides. The voice continued. General Thrak of Kreth, who commands your forces, owns shares in these companies. Every battle makes him richer. Every dead soldier increases his profit. Cavan stared at the data in disbelief. This is propaganda. His commander shouted over the radio, "Turn off your devices. This is an order." But the human broadcast continued, and Cavan could not stop reading. Admiral Zenith of Valoria. Personal wealth, 15 billion credits. Owns shares in 17 weapons manufacturers. General Thrak of Kreth. Personal wealth, 12 billion credits. Hidden estates on 7 worlds. Defense Minister Kroll of Valoria. Personal wealth, 23 billion credits. The list went on and on. Officers who lived in luxury while soldiers died in mud. Leaders who profited from every battle while families mourned their dead. A system designed to continue war forever. Cavan felt something he had never felt before. Not fear. Not anger at the Valorians. Betrayal. Across the battlefield, in a Valorian trench, Sergeant Mira was experiencing the same revelation. She had lost her brother in a battle 3 years ago, her sister 2 years before that. Her father had died when she was a child, all killed fighting the Kreth. She had been told they died as heroes, defending their people, protecting their civilization. But now she was reading about Admiral Zenith's private vacation planet, a planet that cost more than 1,000 soldiers would earn in their entire lifetimes. Mira's hands began to shake. "Squad leader, are you seeing this?" One of her soldiers asked quietly. "I see it," Mira whispered. "Is it real?" I do not know." But deep in her heart she knew it was real. It explained so much. Why peace negotiations always failed at the last moment. Why the most aggressive officers always got promoted. Why the war never ended despite neither side winning. It was not about honor. It was not about survival. It was about money. The human broadcast continued for 2 hours. By the end, both Kreth and Valorian forces on that battlefield sat in shocked silence. Then something strange happened. A single Kreth soldier stood up and walked into the open ground between the two armies. He did not carry his weapon. His hands were raised above his head. "Do not shoot," he called out in Valorian language. His accent was terrible but understandable. "I want to talk." Mira's soldiers raised their weapons. "Wait," she ordered. "Hold fire." She stood up slowly and walked toward the Kreth soldier. They met in the middle of the devastated battlefield. "Did you hear the broadcast?" the Kreth soldier asked. "Yes," Mira replied. "Is it true? About your Admiral Zenith?" "I do not know, but it matches what they said about your General Thrak. Did you know he owned 7 private estates?" The Kreth soldier laughed bitterly. "I share a sleeping pod with 11 other soldiers. We get 1 meal per day, but our general has 7 estates. My unit has been fighting for 8 months without proper medical supplies," Mira said. "But Admiral Zenith just bought her 3rd personal spacecraft." They stared at each other. "Why are we fighting?" the Kreth soldier asked quietly. Mira had no answer. Behind them, more soldiers from both sides began emerging from cover, cautiously, carefully. But they came. Within an hour, soldiers who should have been killing each other were sharing rations and talking. "How long have you been on this planet?" 6 months. "You?" 7 months. "What is this planet even called?" "I do not remember anymore." "Me neither. I do not even know what we are fighting for here." "A mining facility, I think. Or maybe a fuel depot. Is it worth dying for?" "I do not think so." The conversation spread across multiple battle zones. The human shuttles moved from planet to planet, broadcasting their message. dropping data chips, sharing the truth. The generals panicked. In the Kreth military headquarters, General Thrax screamed at his communications officer, "Shut down the broadcast. Jam their signals. Execute any soldier caught listening." But it was too late. The information had spread too far, too fast. On the Valorian command ship, Admiral Zenith faced the same problem. "Sir, our soldiers are refusing orders. They are demanding answers about the financial records. Tell them it is enemy propaganda. They do not believe us anymore, sir." For the first time in 7,000 years, the military leaders of both empires faced a crisis they could not shoot their way out of. And then something unprecedented happened. General Thrax sent a secret message to Admiral Zenith. The two sworn enemies spoke privately for the first time in their careers. "These humans are destroying everything," Thrax hissed. "Agreed," Zenith replied coldly. "We must stop them." "A temporary alliance?" "Temporary. Once the humans are dealt with, we resume the war." "Agreed. For 10,000 years. Kreth and Valorian leaders had refused to cooperate on anything, but now they had a common enemy: the truth. Orders went out to both militaries simultaneously. All forces were to converge on human diplomatic shuttles. The humans were to be destroyed. Any soldier who refused orders would be executed for treason. The trap was set. Thousands of warships from both empires moved into position around a cluster of human shuttles. Ambassador Okafor received the warning from her intelligence team. "Ambassador, both Kreth and Valorian fleets are targeting our position. They are working together." Okafor smiled sadly. "Of course they are. We threatened their profits. Get me a channel to the Galactic Council." "Yes, ma'am." In the council chamber, Councillor Veshira received the emergency transmission. "Councillor, both empires are about to attack our diplomatic vessels. We are unarmed. We will not survive." Veshira stood immediately. "This is a violation of galactic law. They cannot attack a council-sanctioned peace mission." Kroll's voice was grim. "Law does not matter to desperate criminals. We must respond." For the first time in the Council's history, they prepared for military intervention. But something else was happening, something the generals had not anticipated. On every Kreth and Valorian warship, soldiers read their orders and made a choice. Lieutenant Kavan received his command: "Destroy the human vessels." "Fire on my mark." He looked at his crew. They looked back at him. "Sir?" his weapons officer asked. "Orders." Kavan thought about his dead friends, his years of fighting, the data he had read about General Thrax's wealth. He made his decision. No. Across both fleets, the same word echoed: "No, I will not fire. These humans saved us. Our fight is not with them." The generals screamed orders, threatened execution, promised punishment. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the soldiers refused. They had learned the truth, and truth, once known, cannot be unknown. The rebellion General Thrax's face turned dark purple with rage. His clawed hands gripped the command console so hard it cracked. "Fire on the human vessels." "That is a direct order." He roared into the communication system. Silence. No weapons fired. No missiles launched. The massive Kreth war fleet simply floated in space, dormant. "Someone answer me," Thrax screamed. Finally, a voice responded. It was Lieutenant Kavan. "No, sir. We will not fire on unarmed diplomatic ships. You dare disobey me? I will have you executed for treason. Then you will have to execute the entire fleet, sir. Because none of us are following that order." Thrax's communications officer turned pale. "General, I am receiving the same reports from all battle groups. The soldiers refuse to engage the humans." On the Valorian flagship, Admiral Zenith faced identical problems. "Weapons team," I said, "fire." "Admiral, with respect, we decline," came the calm response from her gunnery sergeant. "You decline?" "You decline?" Zenith's voice rose to a shriek. "I am your commanding officer." "You are a criminal, ma'am," the sergeant replied. "We know about your bank accounts. We know about your estates. We know you have been getting rich while our families starved." Zenith slammed her fist on her desk. "Security! Arrest that sergeant immediately." But her security team did not move. "Ma'am," her security chief said quietly, "we are not arresting anyone." The sergeant is right. Across both empires, the same scene repeated on thousands of ships and hundreds of military bases. Officers gave orders. Soldiers refused. the entire military machine ground to a halt. In the Kreth capital city, news of the mutiny spread quickly. Citizens gathered in the streets watching public screens that showed the standoff in space. The soldiers are refusing to fight. An elderly Kreth woman asked her neighbor. They say the generals have been lying to us, getting rich from the war. Is it true? I do not know. But my son died fighting 3 years ago. If the generals were profiting from his death. The woman's voice broke. The crowd's mood shifted from confusion to anger. On Valorian homeworlds, similar gatherings formed. People who had lost loved ones to the war demanded answers. A young Valorian mother pushed through the crowd at the Capitol building, holding a photograph. "My daughter died last year," she shouted. "She was 19 years old. Did she die so Admiral Zenith could buy another mansion?" The crowd roared in support. Within hours, protests erupted on both Kreth and Valorian core worlds. Not small protests, millions of people flooding the streets. "Show us the truth. We demand accountability. How many died for your profits?" The governments tried to suppress the demonstrations. Riot police were deployed, but the police refused to act. "We lost family too," one Kreth officer told his commander. "We want answers as much as they do." General Thrak watched the chaos unfold from his command ship. His carefully maintained system was collapsing. 7,000 years of profitable war was ending. He could not allow it. Communications. Send a secure channel to Admiral Zenith. When the Valorian admiral's face appeared on his screen, Thrak spoke quickly. "We need to restart this war immediately. A massive attack. Something so dramatic that our soldiers will have to respond." Zenith nodded slowly. "What do you propose?" "Your forces attack our colony on Resh 7. Make it brutal. Kill civilians. Make it look like a deliberate massacre. My people will demand revenge. My soldiers will fight again. And then my forces attack one of your colonies in retaliation. Your people will demand blood. Your soldiers will follow orders again. The cycle restarts." Zenith considered this. "Millions will die. Millions always die. At least this time it serves a purpose." "Our purpose. Agreed. Prepare your targets." But neither general realized their secure channel was not secure at all. Human intelligence had been monitoring all military communications since the crisis began. Ambassador Okafor listened to the recording with cold fury. "They are planning to murder their own civilians to restart the war." Her intelligence officer reported. "How long until they execute this plan?" "Estimated 12 hours. Okafor made an immediate decision. "Broadcast this conversation on every public channel in both empires. Right now, everyone needs to hear it." Within minutes, the recorded conversation between Thrak and Zenith played across billions of screens. Citizens heard their own military leaders calmly discussing the murder of civilians. The protests turned into something else, entirely revolution on the Kreth homeworld. A massive crowd surrounded General Thrak's personal estate. They tore down the gates. Security forces stood aside and let them pass. The crowd found evidence of everything the humans had reported. Luxury beyond imagination, art worth millions, wine collections that could feed a battalion for years, while soldiers ate rations. Their general had lived like an emperor on Valoria. Admiral Zenith's private vacation planet was seized by her own military. They documented everything. Private beaches, personal spacecraft collection, a mansion with 200 rooms. One soldier broadcast a message from the mansion's gold-plated bathroom. "My unit shares 4 toilets between 60 soldiers. Admiral Zenith has 23 bathrooms, just for herself." The revelation broke something fundamental in both societies. The Galactic Council watched in amazement as centuries of propaganda and hatred evaporated in days. Councillor Veshera spoke softly. "I have never seen anything like this." "The humans did it," Ambassador Leary said with wonder. "They actually did it, but the crisis was not over." General Thrak, cornered and desperate, made one final decision. If he could not restart the war, he would at least punish those who ruined him. "All loyal ships target the human diplomatic vessels. Fire at will. This is my final order." A handful of ships responded. Officers who were too committed to the old system. Captains who had profited alongside their generals. Approximately 30 warships broke formation and aimed their weapons at the unarmed human shuttles. Ambassador Okafor received the warning. "Multiple vessels targeting our position. They are charging weapons." She closed her eyes briefly. So this is how it ends. But then, something beautiful happened. Lieutenant Caven's voice echoed across all military channels. Any ship that fires on the humans will answer to us. The humans saved us. We will not let them die. Hundreds of Kreth and Valorian ships moved between the human shuttles and the attacking vessels. Former enemies, now protecting the same cause. The handful of loyal generals' ships stopped. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. "Stand down," Sergeant Mira broadcast from her Valorian cruiser. "It is over. The war is over. Let it end." Slowly, the last loyal ships powered down their weapons. General Thrak sat in his command chair, staring at his screen in disbelief. His empire had crumbled in less than a week. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Kreth Command," his communications officer reported quietly. "Put it through." A new face appeared on screen. Not a general, a civilian official. "General Thrak, you are hereby relieved of command. Warrants have been issued for your arrest on charges of fraud, corruption, and conspiracy to commit mass murder. Surrender immediately." Thrak laughed bitterly. "And if I refuse? Then your own soldiers will arrest you, sir. Either way, you are finished." The transmission ended. Thrak looked around his luxurious command bridge. He thought about his 7 estates, his hidden fortune, his decades of carefully maintained power, all gone. He stood slowly and raised his hands. "I surrender." Security forces entered and placed him in restraints. Across the galaxy, Admiral Zenith received identical orders. She surrendered without a fight. Within 24 hours, 93 high-ranking officers from both empires were arrested. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The Galactic Council announced they would oversee war crimes tribunals. Both Kreth and Valorian governments collapsed as the corruption was exposed. Emergency civilian councils took control. For the first time in 10,000 years, there was no one left to give orders to fight. The war did not end with a treaty or a surrender. It simply stopped. On battlefields across dozens of worlds, soldiers from both sides walked away from their positions. Some went home, some stayed and talked to former enemies, some cried, some laughed, some just sat quietly. Trying to process what had happened, Lieutenant Caven found Sergeant Mira on the same planet where they had first heard the human broadcast. "What do we do now?" he asked. Mira looked at the devastated landscape, the ruined buildings, the bomb craters. "I think we rebuild," she said quietly. "Together." "Yes, together." Above them, the human diplomatic shuttles began their journey. Home. Ambassador Okafor watched the planets below and allowed herself a small smile. The hard part was over, but the real work was just beginning. The new beginning. 6 months had passed. Since the arrests, the Galactic Council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from both Kreth and Valorian provisional governments sat side by side for the first time in 10,000 years. It was awkward, uncomfortable, strange, but they were talking. "Counselor," Vashira opened the session with a gentle voice. "We gather today to discuss the future, not the past. The past has given us enough pain. Today we look forward." A young Kreth representative named Thora stood nervously. She had never imagined she would address the council. "Honored members, my people are struggling. Our economy was built on war production. Now that the war has ended, millions are unemployed. Our factories stand empty. We do not know how to live in peace." A Valorian representative, an older male named Corvus, stood as well. "We face the same problems. Our shipyards built warships for generations. Our engineers designed weapons. Our teachers train soldiers now. We do not know what our purpose is." Silence filled the chamber. Ambassador Okafor, sitting in the human delegation section, raised her hand. "May I speak, Counselor?" Vashira nodded. "Of course, Ambassador. You have earned the right to speak anywhere in this galaxy." Okafor stood and walked to the center podium. "The Kreth and Valorians are asking the right question. What do we do now? I believe the answer is simple. You rebuild together." "How?" Thora asked. "We have been enemies for so long. We do not even know how to talk to each other without hostility." "Then you learn," Okafor replied gently. "Humans have experience with this. We had terrible wars in our history. Nations that hated each other for centuries. But we found a way forward. What way? Corvus asked. Shared goals. Joint projects. Working together towards something bigger than old hatred. Okafor activated a holographic display. Look at these planets. Battle zones from the war. Destroyed cities. Poisoned environments. Dead worlds. The images were heartbreaking. Once beautiful planets reduced to wastelands. This is your shared responsibility, Okafor continued. Both empires created this destruction. Both empires must heal it. Together. She expanded the display to show reconstruction plans. Imagine this. Kreth engineers and Valorian architects working side by side to rebuild cities. Your factories that once built weapons can now build schools, hospitals, homes. Your shipyards can construct vessels for exploration and trade instead of war. Thora looked uncertain. Our people will not want to work with Valorians. A voice interrupted from the visitors section. Lieutenant Caven stood up. Forgive me, Counselor. May I speak? Veshera smiled. The soldier who started the rebellion. Of course you may speak. Caven walked forward, his military uniform replaced by simple civilian clothes. Representative Thora, you are wrong. Many of us want to work together. I have been on planet Verdix for 3 months. Former battlefield. Sergeant Mira of the Valorian forces is there too. We lead a joint reconstruction team. Mira stood up from another section. It is true. We have 200 volunteers. Half Kreth, half Valorian. We are rebuilding a city that both our militaries destroyed. And it is working? Corvus asked. Yes, Caven replied. Not perfectly. We argue sometimes. Old prejudices do not disappear overnight. But we are building something real. Something good. Mira joined him at the podium. Last week we completed our first school. Kreth and Valorian children will study there together. That is something I never imagined I would see. The council chamber filled with murmurs. Some hopeful, some skeptical. Ambassador Thexa stood. This is a beautiful story. But 200 volunteers cannot rebuild thousands of destroyed worlds. The scale is too large. Then we make it larger, Okafor said firmly. The Galactic Council can help. Provide resources, coordinate efforts, offer technical assistance. Make this a galaxy-wide reconstruction initiative. Councillor Veshera nodded slowly. A joint peacekeeping and rebuilding program. Supervised by the Council, funded by seized assets from the arrested war criminals. There is enough money? Thora asked. Veshera smiled. The generals and admirals stole trillions over the centuries. Yes, there is enough money, Ambassador Leary spoke up. My people can contribute engineering expertise. We have experience with environmental restoration. Another ambassador stood. My species can provide medical support. Many war victims still need care. One by one, council members offered assistance. The Galactic Council, which had been powerless to stop the war, now united to rebuild after it. Okafor felt tears in her eyes. This was what she had hoped for. 12 months after the war ended, the changes were remarkable. On planet Verdix, the joint reconstruction team had grown from 200 volunteers to 20,000. Entire neighborhoods rose from the ruins. Parks replaced bomb craters. Markets opened where battlefields once stood. Caven and Mira walked through the new central plaza together. Do you remember what this place looked like a year ago? Caven asked. Rubble. Bodies. Burned vehicles. Mira replied quietly. Now look at it. Children played in fountains. Kreth and Valorian families shopped together. Street vendors sold food from both cultures. A small Kreth child ran past, chasing a Valorian child. They were laughing. They do not even know they are supposed to be enemies, Caven observed. Good, Mira said. Let them never know that hatred. Let them grow up differently. Across the galaxy, similar scenes repeated. Former war zones transformed into communities. Old hatred slowly replaced by cautious cooperation. It was not perfect. There were setbacks. Some Kreth and Valorian extremists tried to restart conflicts. Old veterans struggled to let go of their anger. Some communities rejected cooperation, but the momentum toward peace was stronger than the pull toward war. 2 years after the rebellion, another significant event occurred. The war crimes trials concluded. General Thrak, Admiral Zenith, and 91 other officers were found guilty of crimes against both their own people and each other's. The evidence was overwhelming. The sentences were severe but fair. No executions despite many calling for them. Instead, life imprisonment and complete seizure of all assets. We will not become like them, the Joint Kreth-Valorian Justice Committee declared. We will not kill to solve our problems. That is the old way. We choose a new way. The day the sentences were announced, Thrak was allowed to make a statement. The once powerful general looked old and broken. I have no excuses, he said quietly. I believed the war would continue forever. I believed I was simply taking advantage of an unchangeable reality. I was wrong, and I am sorry. It was not enough. Words could not bring back the billions who died, but it was something. 3 years after the war ended, the first joint Kreth-Valorian government was proposed. Not a merger, not a conquest, a voluntary federation. The vote was close. Many on both sides opposed it, but ultimately, a slim majority chose unity. The new federation's first act was to establish the official Day of Remembrance, a day when both species would honor all who died in the 10,000-year war. Monuments were built on hundreds of worlds. Simple stone structures listing names, Kreth names and Valorian names together. The message was clear. We will never forget what hatred cost us. 5 years after the war ended, Ambassador Okafor returned to the Galactic Council chamber. She was older now, tired, ready to retire, but she had been invited for a special ceremony. Councillor Veshra, also showing her age, stood to address the assembled representatives. 5 years ago, a young human stood in this chamber and told us something we did not want to hear. She told us we had been trying to solve the wrong problem. She was right. Veshra gestured to Okafor. Ambassador Jennifer Okafor, on behalf of the Galactic Council and the trillions of lives saved by your courage, we present you with the Council's highest honor, the Star of Unity. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from dozens of species stood in respect. Cavan and Mira, now co-directors of the Reconstruction Initiative, applauded loudest of all. Okafor accepted the medal with tears streaming down her face. I did not do this alone, she said. My team of analysts worked for years. The soldiers who chose peace over orders, the civilians who demanded truth, the council members who gave us a chance. This belongs to all of us. She paused, looking around the chamber. But most of all, this belongs to the Kreth and Valorian people who had the courage to choose a different future. They were told to hate. They chose to question. They were ordered to fight. They chose to stop. They inherited a terrible legacy. They decided to create a better one. More applause filled the chamber. When the ceremony ended, Okafor walked quietly to an observation deck. She looked out at the stars. A voice spoke behind her. It is beautiful, is it not? She turned to see Veshra approaching slowly. Yes, Counselor, it is. I have lived a long time, Veshra said softly. I sat in this council when the war was young. I never believed I would see it end. Thank you for proving me wrong. Will it last? Okafor asked. The peace. Veshra considered this carefully. I do not know. Old hatreds run deep, but I believe the new generation has a chance. They are building relationships their ancestors never could. Friendships, partnerships, even... She smiled. Romances. I hear the first Kreth-Valorian wedding happened last month. Okafor laughed. I heard that too. The children of that marriage will belong to both worlds, Veshra continued. They will be the living symbol of unity. More will follow. In 2 or 3 generations, the line between Kreth and Valorian will blur. They will simply be people. I hope you are right. So do I, Ambassador. So do I. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. 10 years after the war ended, historians tried to identify the exact moment peace began. Some said it was when the humans broadcast the truth. Others claimed it was when Lieutenant Cavan and Sergeant Mira refused their orders. A few argued it was when the generals were arrested, but most agreed on a different moment. The real turning point was when an old Kreth woman and a young Valorian man met in the ruins of a destroyed city. The woman had lost her son in the war. The young man had lost his parents. They had every reason to hate each other. Instead, They sat together on broken stones and cried, and when they were done crying, they picked up those stones and started rebuilding. That was the moment, not a grand speech, not a treaty signing, not a military victory, just two people choosing hope over hatred. That choice, repeated millions of times across both civilizations, changed everything. The galaxy learned an important lesson from the Kreth-Valorian War. Peace is not achieved by defeating enemies. Peace is achieved by showing enemies they have more in common than they thought. The strongest weapon is not a bigger gun, it is truth, and sometimes the wisest voice in the room comes from the newest arrival. Ambassador Jennifer Okafor of Earth had proven that the 10,000-year war was over, the healing had begun, and the galaxy was better for it. The end.